Okay, welcome to a bit more of Christian practices. This is session 3, I think, that I've done for you. We're calling this one Festivals. How and why Christmas and how and why Easter are celebrated, and we're going to talk a little bit about pilgrimages, such as Lourdes and Iona and Jerusalem and Compostela, Santiago de Compostela. We will try and get as far as. So we're going to start off by looking at festivals, the role and importance of festivals for Christians. I'm going to go off on a mild red herring to do with Ascension and Pentecost and Harvest and All Souls and Remembrance as festivals as well. Then we're going to come on to Christmas and then to Easter, and then we're going to have a little look at pilgrimages. Okay, pilgrimages. We'll get to that in a moment. So hopefully you are too young for this. But if I were to ask you if you've been on a pilgrimage, if I've asked if you've been to a festival, I wonder, what you would reply. If you want to ask your parents, have you ever been to a festival? I wonder what they would say to that word, because they might say something like, "What do you mean, like Glastonbury?" Which is a massive, huge music festival. And I've never been there, but it's a great place to go and camp and to hear lots of music and things like that. Apparently, but I don't know because I've not been there. What I'm trying to do is build a bridge between the concept of festival that I would hope you sort of might be able to go, all right, I get that, and then how to connect that to what a Christian festival might be like. You should be aware that all faiths will have their festivals. I really can't think of a religion that does not have a festival. This must be. I can't think of any. And at the moment, we've just finished Ramadan. So Muslims have just finished celebrating. They've had their Eid, isn't it? Is at the end of their Ramadan. So they've just got to the end of that. And just before that, we had the Jewish festival of Passover. And about now, we've got the Jewish festival of Shavuot, which is a terribly important festival as they celebrate Moses giving them the law. And it's an early harvest festival. It's at the beginning of harvest rather than an end of harvest festival. Okay, so lots of people are keen and doing different religions, festivals. Christians, we're keen on festivals as much as the next, and what we like are other things than what we're going to talk about in a moment. Things like Ascension Day, which we had 10 days ago. And it's when we as Christians, we celebrate Jesus. He's risen from the dead, and now at this point he ascends to heaven, and so we celebrate that. And then today, Pentecost. Actually, I'm recording this on Pentecost Sunday. Hugely important moment where we celebrate God pouring out His Spirit upon us. It's terrific. And then in September, sometimes October, we will have a harvest festival. Really important thing. As we celebrate the harvest that's come in. In November, there's All Souls Day, All Saints Day. Now, you'll be familiar with this, but for the wrong reasons, or shall I kindly say different reasons. All Saints Day, you will know as All Hallows Day, and you'll know the evening before All Hallows Day, you'll know that as Hallows Evening, Halloween. So you'll know that as that, and maybe at some stage we could explore why Christians think that that's a really important festival. And then we get into November and we have Remembrance Sunday, that poppy wearing thing, and that's a very special moment. Well, for all people, frankly, it's not a Christian thing, especially. But in my view, I would say that All Souls isn't especially a Christian thing. And I would say harvest isn't especially a Christian thing. And you might come back and say, well, what about Mother's Day? That's not especially a Christian thing. Everyone's got a mother. To which I would say, well, yes, but we as Christians, we don't celebrate Mother's Day. We celebrate Mothering Sunday. Mothering Sunday. Mothering Sunday is so much more important, in my opinion, because it includes and encompasses those of us who don't have mothers. Our mothers died a long time ago, and we have not been brought up by our mothers, and so we give thanks to God for those people who have cared for us, who have mothered us. And so it's not just a day where we give flowers to our actual mothers, but a day when we celebrate those people who have cared for us. And that could be a whole bunch of people, grannies and maybe uncles and dads, And in the church, we look to the church as our mother, because in worshipping in our church family, which is often what we refer to our congregations, we think of those as being all about. Okay, now let's get on to Christmas. So we're looking at how we celebrate Christmas. Okay, this really ought to be a duh kind of thing, because you should already know how we celebrate Christmas. It's full of the Christingle, that orange thing with the candle and the sweet sticking out of it. You've got the Christingle, you've got carol services, you've got presents, you've got Christmas crackers, and you've got the Queen's speech, and other terribly important things like that. Some of those are very Christian, some of those are very English, and a lot of those are not especially Christian or English, and you don't have to worry about it too much. So it's not wrong when you go, that's how Christians celebrate Christmas, but it's also not quite right. The problem is that the moment we hit the 1st of December, all our TV adverts are suddenly, oh, let's get going, let's get excited about Christmas. And as Christians, what we're going is, we don't want to get excited just yet. We're trying not to get excited. What we're trying to do, so Christians have a thing called Advent. And Advent is about preparing us for Christmas. And for us, that's about thinking deeply about deep thoughts. And so we focus on a bunch of different stuff. But some of the things we could focus on would be heaven and hell and death and judgment. And you should be going, oh my gosh, that's so deep. Why would you do that to yourself? But sometimes we will look at these big issues, death, judgment, hell and heaven. And we'll think about what those are about. And that will prepare us for the joy of Christmas and for our need for Christmas as we get closer to that. So that's Advent. That's a really important aspect. Now, Christians want to think about this deep stuff, and so that when we get to Christmas Day, we are ready to celebrate what happens. So here's Mary, and then the angel comes and says to Mary, and then Mary gets all excited, and then we have Jesus. And actually my Jesus is in the box down there, so I forgot to get it out for this, never mind. And so here we are, we've got Christmas. Now Christians get excited about Christmas because there are two reasons. First reason is because this is a historic moment. We know where Jesus was born, and we do, to within a few feet, so in Bethlehem. So we get very excited about that sort of thing. More on that when we get to pilgrimage. And the other reason is this word Emmanuel. It means God with us. And there's another jargon word here, incarnation. Incarnation. John's Gospel tells us the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And it is really hard to convey to somebody just how enormously exciting that is. This is the idea that the infinite God should step into the finite world, that the Creator should somehow get caught up in his own creation. It's really quite a difficult concept to convey. But what it means for us as Christians is that it means that when we're struggling and life is just awful and rotten and hard and everything's just horrible, and we pray to God, we know that God knows what it's like. He's been there. He knows what it's like to be hunted and persecuted, to be bullied and vilified. And I'll stop there because you'll know some of where this story goes. So if you're a Christian, then I expect you to be enjoying Christmas crackers and the presents and so on. But this really is a moment where we get to sit back a little and look at God and go, wow, that is really amazing. You're awesome. Okay, that was Christmas. Now, on to how do we celebrate Easter? Now, you're thinking that we celebrate Easter with hot cross buns and Easter eggs, and you're not wrong. That is kind of how we do it. We start off with Pancake Day, Shrove Tuesday, in which this is supposed to be eating up all the yummy stuff in the house. It's really not going to happen because now we have lots of shops with lots of yummy stuff, so it's just going to carry on. But nonetheless, we still celebrate Shrove Tuesday, and we have these pancakes, and then into Ash Wednesday. Ash Wednesday is when we have literally a pot of ash, and I will put a smear of ash on your forehead, and it's a remembrance of what Lent is about. So now we're in the period of Lent, and this is This is a good moment for Christians, because the TV adverts don't get so excited about this. They tend to leave this period alone. They're pushing Easter eggs at you all the way from February all the way through to the end of April. Don't worry about that. They mostly don't get overly excited about the whole period of Advent, of preparation and thinking. So some Christians will fast. We'll fast from certain foods like chocolate. We might fast from alcohol, abstain from alcohol for the whole 40-day period. Some people I know, they abstain from Facebook. Lots of you are too young to bother with Facebook, but my generation, we thought Facebook was really hip and cool. So some of my friends, they will go, I'm coming off Facebook. And a lot of that is about recognizing you don't need it. You can actually live for 40 days without alcohol. You can live for 40 days without chocolate. You'll be fine. You can do this. And so a question to you is, actually, what would you be saying? Oh, I couldn't do that. Well, I mean, does that mean it has become an addiction for you? It has become a little god on your back. And maybe if you were to just give it up for a month, and then come back to it, and it's okay. But it's an activity that Christians do as a way of either seeing, do I have any of my own self-will still, or have I utterly lost this? Am I actually dependent upon how many of my friends like what I put up on Facebook? Am I so emotionally dependent upon that? Or in seeing that dependence, realizing my desperate need for Easter Day. So here we come closer to Easter Day. Now, two important concepts here. One is atonement, and I really feel I touched on this when we did that very first bit of YouTube that I did maybe 3-4 weeks ago, where we looked at atonement. And this is this idea of, how do you and I become friends? You and I are friends, but then we fall out. How do I become friends? I need to say sorry, you need to say sorry. I need to go, oh, it doesn't matter. You need to say, oh, it doesn't matter. And then hugs and make up. There we go, we're friends again. But if I were to break a pen, all right, then if I were to break your pen, then for us to be friends again, I kind of need to give you another pen, or I need to pay for a pen or something like that. Okay, but if I were to break your iPad or your tablet or something like that, drop your phone down the loo, suddenly that becomes a bit more serious, and I can't afford to pay for that. I'm sorry I broke it, but I can't afford to pay. I don't have that much money. So now what are we going to do? How do we deal with that? Now, if you're really, really rich, you get to go, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll get another one. And maybe it's on insurance or something. And so you're able to say, I forgive you. Okay, and then hugs and we're friends again. And there you are. Now, what happens if we break a world? If we break a world, how do we become friends with God who made it? How do we then deal with that? Very interesting during this COVID-19, this lockdown period, how the world seems to be sort of healing itself in different parts. But that would be a bit of a red herring, so I'm not going to go there. But very interesting. Now, this is why Christians get terribly excited about the cross, because we see on it, and this is this key word, atonement, we see on it, as Jesus is dying on the cross, he comes to save us from our sins, to save us from ourselves, to save us from our selfishness. He comes to pay the price. He comes to make us friends with God again. And so that's why we get terribly excited about Good Friday. We're not always sure how to celebrate Good Friday. Okay, sometimes some Christians celebrate Good Friday in a really miserable way. We're really miserable about the whole thing, because we are envisaging just how broken this world is, and we're saying, please, Jesus, help. Okay, so that's fair. And then there's another approach where we get to Good Friday and we go, there's a reason why we call it good. And we call it good because it's on this day that Jesus reconciles us to God, reconnects us to God, makes us friends with God. That is why this day is good. Yes, it requires a sacrifice, pretty serious and big sacrifice, and we are thankful to Jesus for that. But we're going to celebrate it because it is a good sacrifice and it results in a good thing. So that's why we get excited about Easter. Okay, what was the other? There's another reason. Oh yeah, to do with Easter Day, resurrection. So you'll see this is a cross, not a crucifix. A crucifix is a cross, but with the body of Jesus still on it. but this is a cross, not a crucifix. And so for me, it is also a symbol of Easter Day, the resurrection. It's not just a symbol of Good Friday, but the resurrection. And if you remember when we talked about the resurrection, we talked about how Jesus doesn't simply die and come back again. He dies and breaks death and goes through and out the other side. And so Christians get very excited because we realize now that we've had somebody who's gone through death and come to us and told us to have faith. Through Jesus, we now understand there is more to life than life, and so we look forward to heaven, and so we're not afraid of death. There's a guy in the Bible called Paul who says death has lost its sting, grave has lost its victory. And so those first Christians, they weren't as afraid of death as people were before, and it's because of Jesus, because of Good Friday, because of Easter Day. So that's why we get pretty excited. Okay, so we've done Christmas, we've done Easter, and now let's have a little look at pilgrimages, okay, because it is on your sheet. I do like these sheets, they're really cool. I think they're very impressive. I like the artwork. Pilgrimages. Now, pilgrimages are things that everybody does. It's actually not that big a deal, but it's not a big a deal in Christianity. Okay, so I think in Islam you've got your 5 pillars, and one of those pillars is Hajj, isn't it? The Hajj, it's to go on a pilgrimage. It's a key thing. It's one of the 5. Go on a pilgrimage. And in Christianity, we don't have that. At no point does Jesus say, yeah, do a pilgrimage, it'll be good for you. No, none of the Bible says do a pilgrimage. But over the years, Christians have said, yeah, this is quite good, we should do this. And people have done it, and they've found it very helpful. So, for example, Iona is an island off Scotland, and it's a lovely place to just go and sit and read and pray and sing and study. And yeah, you could do that sitting under a tree in a park somewhere, but you just have to go to Iona and see if you see what I mean. But there are other places like Walsingham, the shrine to Our Lady of Walsingham. Okay, whenever Our Lady is used, it's pretty much always Mary. It's going to be Our Lady Mary of Walsingham. I can't remember the backstory to Walsingham, but I went there, and it just really didn't work for me. No, not really. So other people, they love it. They go there, and it's a pilgrimage for them, and it's a shrine, and they find that somehow or other they draw close to God through it. Good for you. Doesn't work for me. So Walsingham, no, not really. There's other places like Lourdes in France, and people go there because there have been stories of healing. And maybe if I go, maybe this year, maybe it'll be me that heals. But I think very often you're misunderstanding why people are going. They're not always going for the purposes of getting physically healed. I will no longer need my crutches. My legs will now work. I will no longer need that. No, I don't think they always go with that in mind. I think very often people go and they find when they get there that they meet with God, and they find a peace and a forgiveness and a grace that they were not expecting. And this is something that is a key element to a pilgrimage. You go there and you encounter yourself and you encounter God in a new and fresh way, and you come out a refreshed person or a changed person. You think about things differently. But it's not always about the place that you go to. So Lourdes is a place in France. You go there, that's where you do the pilgrimage. It's not always about that. So for example, in Spain, there is a long walk to a place called Santiago de Compostela. And it's a long walk, and there's all sorts of different places where you can begin, and you can just walk for months if you want to. Now, if you were to just fly in to Santiago de Compostela and just go to the church and go, okay, where's the pilgrimage? Well, what do? It wouldn't work for you. You'd just be going, ooh, this is not working for me. Because it's not about arriving, it's about the walking, and it's all about walking there. And as you walk day after day after day after day after day, and the road is signed with shells. And so you know that you're on the right path because you see the sign. This is also known as the sign of St. James. And in Spanish, Iago is somehow or other connected to the word James. And so you have Saint, Iago, St. James. St. James or St. James of Compostela. Not quite sure how or why, but that would be a different story. But this is the symbol of the pilgrim, and it's certainly the symbol of the pilgrimage of Santiago de Compostela. And as you walk, the process of walking, you think through life, you think through thoughts, you think through your worries, and the worries start to go, and things don't seem so important as they were when you were at home, and now you're away from home, and so they just sort of evaporate. And in the process of walking, you find forgiveness and grace and healing in your mind and perhaps in your body as you get fitter and stronger as you walk, and the blisters don't seem so important as you keep going. So there you are. That's why it's about process rather than about arriving. But for me, there's been a handful of places, and if I was coming into your classroom at this point, I would bore you with slideshow upon slideshow, because I've been to Nazareth, and in Nazareth there is the Church of the Annunciation. Okay, so this is the church where where the angel came and spoke to Mary and said, "You're going to have a baby." Now, okay, there wasn't a church there. The church has been built since then, but there is a whole bunch of first century houses and homes there. I mean, obviously, no, they've all sort of rotted away by now, but you can see the stonework that formed them. And there's a place even, it's called Mary's Bakery. And if you ever do get to be a tourist there, they will never take you. You have to actually ask, where is Mary's Bakery? Because it's just around the corner of the church. And you have to actually ask for it. And it's amazing, because you get to go there and you go, we know that Mary really, really lived here. And this is the place where it all started, with the angel coming to Mary. I've been to Bethlehem. Now, in Bethlehem, if you see any sort of pictures of Bethlehem, you'll see this sort of glass plate. There's a glass plate, and outside of this glass plate is a 14-pointed star. And there is a reason why it's 14-pointed, but that'll wait. And through this glass plate, you can't really see because it's a bit dark. There's a cave underneath, and underneath is the cave where Jesus was born. And yeah, it probably really is. And if it isn't, they're out by like 10 yards, maybe 20 yards max. This really is ground zero, where the Word became flesh, where Jesus hit the dirt to be, that sounds a bit crude, never mind, we'll enjoy it, where Jesus arrived. And so this is a really special place. If you love Jesus, you get to this moment and you go, oh my gosh, this is where Jesus came. Bethlehem. So Nazareth, Bethlehem, and Jerusalem. So I've been to the place where Jesus gave all sorts of speeches and healings and teachings, and then the place where they crucified him. And so I've been to see, I'm trying to look for my cross there so I can wave it at you like a prop. So I've been to see Golgotha, the place of the skull, where Jesus was crucified, and I've been to see his tomb, which, okay, has been messed around with over the thousands of years, but it's in the right place, I think. And so you go to these places, and some of them are bang-on historical places, and you go, yeah, Jesus was really here. And for me, that is amazing, and I get very excited. I hope you can tell that. And there are other places that are similar to how it would have been in the days of Jesus. There's a lovely place called the Garden Tomb. So if ever you get to Jerusalem, look out for the Garden Tomb. And it's really peaceful, and it's really lovely, and they show you what an ancient tomb would have looked like. And how Jesus would have been buried, and so on. They show you how that would have been. It's brilliant. So I commend that to you as a place to go. Now, every now and then you'll kind of find some people who will go, yeah, but, you know, instead of spending all that money on going on a pilgrimage, shouldn't you do something better, like give the money to the poor? Okay, now it's only meanie people who say things like that, and they're only saying it to wind you up and be annoying, so you can just ignore them. That's stupid talk. All right, there's a big deal in Christian understanding of what it means to grow as a Christian. Part of that is to do with giving money. We call it tithing, giving a set amount of your pocket monies, your earnings, away to charity, to doing good. So you should be doing that already. So that concept of giving is already a big deal for Christians. I would suggest bigger than pilgrimages. But then the other thing is this idea of, oh yes, but it's all too commercialized. And they're absolutely right. You can go there and you can buy. This is holy water from the Jordan, from where Jesus was baptized. Holy water from that same river. Okay, It isn't. It's actually tap water from Jerusalem, because the tap water from Jerusalem comes out of that river. It is the same thing, but they bottle it up and they sell it to you. And if you're a tourist or a pilgrim, you're gullible and you buy it and you go, yeah, it's so excited, and you do that. You buy stuff. This is a wooden Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus that I bought when I was in Jerusalem. You do that stuff. Now, the accusation that it's commercialized, it was always commercialized. It was commercialized in Jesus' day. He got really upset about it and turned tables over. There's a story that goes with that. So, yeah, get over yourself. Yes, it's commercialized, but you can still see this is what is good for you. Now, those of you going, I can't afford a pilgrimage, that's just really expensive. I can't afford the time for it. I haven't got that sort of time. So there's a thing called a retreat, and lots of Christians do this, and they go off on a retreat. And a retreat can be a day, 2 days, 3 days, it can be a week, where we go somewhere and we just sit and be. And we might read a book, we might pray, but we might deliberately not make ourselves busy. Okay, we might just, like we were saying at the beginning, sit under a tree and sit and stop and think. Maybe go for a walk and not worry about stuff. Now, some of you are going, that really sounds like a holiday. To which the answer is, well done. It is a holiday. Only as Christians we call it a holy day. You see, that's where you get your word holiday from. It comes from our word holy day. And so we have these holy days where we just spend it relaxing and letting our souls catch up with ourselves. And that becomes an important part for us as Christians to develop. Our faith. I feel like I've wandered off track because we were talking about pilgrimages and then I went off track and talked to you about a retreat. Jesus goes on a retreat, as it happens. He goes on a couple of retreats. One of them is 40 days long, but that is another story. Well done if you got this far. We have been looking at how and why Christians celebrate Easter and Christmas. So well done you. And we got as far as pilgrimages, and we looked at places and we looked at journey and the benefits that come through a pilgrimage. And then I went off on a mild red herring to do with a retreat, but it's only a mild red herring. So well done you. You have earned yourself another biscuit if you've gotten this far. And maybe I will virtually see you again. Bye.